All right. A lot going on with the Houston Texans. We thought Brandin Cooks was the only guy that could potentially be on his way out, but you have a release of Tyler Johnson. You have Kamu Grugier-Hill asking for his release, and all of a sudden Nick Caserio's a pretty busy guy. The most relevant thing that happened today, and I think you can kind of lump this in with everything we've been talking about with Brandin Cooks. And if you didn't watch the last video about Brandin Cooks, first of all, what the hell are you doing with your life? And second of all, be sure to subscribe to the channel because we'll get into everything on a daily basis. It's going to be daily content with your Houston Texans. And we got you covered like nobody else. Brandin Cooks skipped his media availability. Brandin Cooks, a no-show on a Wednesday. No-show. Let me raise up here, North Carolina style. Every Wednesday for the last 2 years, Brandin Cooks has spoken. He's never missed. Now, with all this speculation, with all this drama, with him voicing his displeasure about the departure of Jack Easterby, Brandin Cooks no-shows his media availability. And look, they can tell you that, he had to get a lift. And you guys know better than that. There's something going on here. And now there's reports coming out that Brandin Cooks could be traded. And quite frankly, if Brandin Cooks wants to be traded, and if his entire happiness with the Houston Texans is tied to Jack Easterby, he's not a good enough player to where you just hold off and hope that he cools off. And if this is something that's going to eat at you, and you're going to have to figure something out, kick rocks. Kick rocks. You got all kinds of draft equity. You got a stacked rookie receiving class in the upcoming draft. Maybe you can take on some of the salary. Brandin Cooks wants out. Kick rocks. Peace out. It's really that simple. He's not playing worth a damn anyways. And I do think it's weird that a guy like Brandin Cooks, who's a good player, if the Texans trade him, would have been traded 4 times before he hits 30. Now, I know there's been some good value there, but 4 times before 30? How many players get traded 4 times in their career? I bet the list is really short. But if he wants to go, you got to let him go. This isn't like a play hardball situation. He wants to go, you let him go. It's not the precedent you set. But at this point, they tried to hold off as long as they could with Deshaun Watson. They let him go. And then you had this today. Kamu Grugier-Hill released per his request. Okay, buddy. Undersized linebacker, can't cover. Hard worker. Really gave the Texans all he could for a couple of years. Good dude. Enjoyed talking to him in the locker room. Okay. His playing time was going to get lowered because of Christian Harris anyways. We were going to see less Kamu Grugier-Hill. And we've been asking for that for a while. So if he wants to go too, peace out. Nick Caserio's got a lot going on. He also happened to release Tyler Johnson yesterday, who, man, just never worked out. Kicked the tires popped. Other than that, not much going on. I'll get my guy, Brandon Scott, in here to talk about this in a sec. The comments, leave them right there. I'll answer those. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social medias at Landry Locker. Listen to In the Loop on Sports Radio 610. Fire up the Odyssey app. We actually had a Brandin Cooks column today for my Wednesday piece. So we got a lot of hype men up here. Let's do this. Let's do this. Michael says trade Cooks for a 3rd-round pick. Doubt if we could get a second. I don't know that you can get a 3rd. Maybe you can. I don't know that you can get a 3rd. Maybe you take on some of the salary. But if you get a second, you damn sure do it. That's for dang sure. You definitely do that. Brian, I hope your dog gets in the video. You should have a segment called Landry's Doghouse. Dog's actually laying down here. I'll get Pacey's Brandin Cooks steak. Hold up. Let's see. She's actually worn out. She's been playing with her best friend at the park. What do you think of Brandin Cooks? Nothing? She's hard to co-host with sometimes. Ain't got much to say. Landry got the slick down Godfather 2 look going on. A little bit. Hell, I mean, we're cutting people. We're trading people. Don't they do that in The Godfather? I'll be honest. I couldn't get through The Godfather. I know that's offensive. I couldn't get through it, man. I got to watch Rocky tonight. Don't let me forget that. We're going to review Rocky. I think B. Scott's ready to go. Not sure. Dude's got weird technology. Sometimes it goes in and out. The Easterby guys are leaving. I would imagine KGH's release was part of that too. Maybe. He wasn't going to be back next year anyways. Bye-bye now. Larry said. Why did we not get a draft pick for KGH? What draft pick you going to get for KGH? What do you think you're going to get? Come on. What are you watching? You've been watching this. I'm probably in the minority. Now, I will say this. I haven't read the rest of this yet, the rest of Rob's comment. I bet you that he's not as in the minority as he says he is. But usually when someone says I might be in the minority, it's usually like followed by Tom Brady's a good quarterback. I might be in the minority. I'm probably in the minority in this, but Stroud or Young compared with another first-round receiver is the move for me. We need it. I don't know who's going to be Team Stroud and who's going to be Team Young and all that type of stuff and where they're going to draft. I'm not Team Stroud. I'll tell you that much. I'm not. But I don't think you're too alone. I think there's probably some people that are going to like Stroud. Brian says LMAO. Sounds like she said things are rough for Cooks right now. That's definitely what she said. Cooks going to Green Bay for a second. If they do that, more power to them. Because this second, I'm telling you right now, you've seen some wide receivers go in the second round that have made serious impacts in this division. A.J. Brown was a second-round pick. Michael Pittman Jr., he's a second-round pick. This is a stacked wide receiver. This is a stacked running back draft. So if you do get in that second round, you're in some damn good shape. Damn good shape. Boutte, Addison, Smith and Jigba. My man out of TCU that committed to Texas and then decommitted. Some good-ass receivers in this draft. So you can get in that second. You can stack it up. You're straight. I think you got to get a receiver even if Cooks is out. Honestly, I think it'd be in your best interest to make him your second-best receiver. Let's talk to B. Scott. B. Scott is here. He's doing the Lord's work. What's up, B. Scott? How you doing?
What up, man? What up, man? How you living, man? I'm enjoying the channel, man. You're doing some good work.
Trying. How you feel about this Cook stuff and this Kamu Grugier-Hill stuff?
Yeah, so let's start with Cook since he's the better player. I'm with you in terms of like if he doesn't want to be here, good riddance. Let him be out of here, at this point. And good riddance sounds.
And I don't think that should be the case for everybody, but in his case, like if he's not a culture guy, we don't need him.
Yeah, well, and I don't even really mean it in a hostile way, but like kind of like what you just said. If he's not a culture guy, we don't need him. But also, I just think that this team is at a point that I think you had Sean Bajani on filling in for Lopez the other day, kind of.
Yeah, Bajani was talking about how he wants to get rid of all the Easterby guys.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know about all of them, like Kamu Grugier-Hill, whatever. Like with him, like, are we even sure? That's why I was laughing in the queue earlier when somebody said, why couldn't you get a draft pick for Kamu Grugier-Hill? I mean, he might not even be better than Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Jake Hansen, Blake Cashman, Garrett Wallow's getting snaps. You know what I mean? Like, Kamu Grugier-Hill's contributions to this team at this point are negligible. I think Brandin Cooks could still be a good player for you, given in the right situation, or like I just think he's had a couple of bad games. But the fact is the Texans just don't need really good expensive players. Like at this point, like cheap labor is the way to go. Player evaluation is the way to go. Develop young guys. I'm working on a column right now for sportsradio610.com that is essentially anointing Nico Collins as the number one receiver for the Texans, which all of us already know that to be the case.
Got the most yards and 17 less targets.
Most yards and 17 less targets. We got a few other cool stats for Nico Collins as well. But the point is, like, just even the eye test for you at this point shows you, like, he's got the fourth most yards per receptions for anybody with 15 or more catches, only behind like Rashad Bateman, Corey Davis, and Jalen Waddle. We talk a lot about Davis Mills and comparing him to second-year quarterbacks or the quarterbacks that are in his draft class, which I think is a fruitless pursuit because none of those guys have shown themselves to be any good on a consistent basis. But like you look at some of the second-year pass catchers in the NFL, some of the second-year wide receivers, Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith. Those are the only guys that he trails in receiving yards among guys that are second-year wide receivers. So Nico Collins is really making a name for himself. I think it's a shame that the guy is injured and is probably going to miss at least a game. But the point being that he's surpassed Brandin Cooks as the number one receiver.
Which says more about Cooks, honestly, than it does Nico to me.
At least it says at least as much about Cooks, I think. I think it does say a lot about Nico, and it's a credit to Nico because I wasn't even sure and you said this as well, I wasn't even sure if he's a number two guy. Because that was the conversation. Like, could he be the complementary piece? That was the conversation during camp. He needs to be the complementary piece to Brandin Cooks. Turns out he's the best receiver that you got. And Brandin Cooks' contributions are also negligible. And to the point, man, again, somebody that's that expensive, what do you need them for if they're not there as the culture guy, if they're not there to bring guys up, if they're not there because they truly want to be? The thing I find interesting about it, Landry, is not that long ago, Brandin Cooks was asked directly
about a trade.
Why not, why renege on the trade idea, or why not ever want to trade? Why sign back here? Why are you still here, basically, was the question. And his answer was something to the effect of, because I believe in Nick Caserio, which is why the whole narrative about, is this a Jack Easterby thing? And I know he got up there and talked about Jack because he was asked about him last week. But the whole idea that he would want to leave because Jack is gone, but he wanted to stay to begin with because of Nick Caserio, and he supposedly believed in his vision. Like I was mentioning to someone in the office today, like, what changed? What changed? No one expected this team to be good. And you can argue by point differential and the fact that they've been in every game that they are making some strides in terms of development. You could at least make that argument. So, like, my question would be, what changed? What exactly is it? Like, I would love to know.
I think there's a clear change. I mean, I don't know if that's a fact, but there's been one thing that's changed.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, the Easterby thing doesn't make sense.
Which is creepy to me, because if that's really, I'm using the word creepy. Like, if your happiness in Houston is tied to Jack Easterby, that's weird to me. That's just really strange.
Well, especially a place that gave you all of this guaranteed money. You couldn't go anywhere else to any other team. Brandin Cooks couldn't go to any other team and be the number one wide receiver. I don't think any other team would have paid him this much money. So to me, it's like, what would it be? To me, I don't buy the Jack Easterby thing. I don't buy that being the reason. And honestly, I'm not even sure how disgruntled he is necessarily. Like, I wonder if it's just a matter of Brandin Cooks understanding
it might be a Davis Mills thing. I mean, it might be a Davis Mills thing. And maybe he just realizes it's going to be a longer process than he thought. I don't know. But 4-win Texans teams are all that he's known. And that's what he committed to. Shree says the jury's still out on 12's development for me. Trial by fire route running and expanding his tree for that. Yeah, nobody's. We're not even saying that Nico Collins, at least I don't want to speak for you, but we're not saying Nico Collins is like a bona fide number 1 or number 2 receiver. The point is, on this team, he's been the best receiver. That's the point. That's a disaster. Like if you're trying to compete, but on this team, he's been the number 1 receiver.
Yeah, no, I agree with your point, Landry, but I would say in terms of like this question about the jury is still out on the development. The commenter says the jury is still out on development. 100%. Dude's only in his second year and is really just now showing like signs of putting it all together. But my whole point about him was that there were question marks about the development and whether he could be at least even what he's showing us right now. And I would credit him for developing and seeming to look better. You talk about route running, catching everything, being a reliable target, and being a big target like you would expect. Like he's at the very least meeting expectations, and I would argue that he's exceeding them just individually, just him in a vacuum, you know. But on top of that, like your point is valid on this dude shouldn't be your number 1 receiver, and probably in an ideal world, maybe not even your number 2, and at the very least, your number 1 should be better, much better than him, or much better than Brandin Cooks.
It's really kind of crazy when you look at the draft, because I'm pumped for the draft, and the more we talk about, the more excited I get, especially if stuff holds up and you have the number 2 and number 5 pick or whatever else goes down. But damn, where the hell do you start? Like, where the hell do you even start? Like, you need receivers.
Yeah.
You need front 7. Front 7's your biggest issue.
That's it.
You need a quarterback.
No, I think
you need linebackers.
Well,
you probably need a tight end once we start getting a little bit later in. You need maybe 2. You really need pretty much everything.
Yeah, man.
That's exciting.
A tight end
truly take, like, it's kind of bullshit when someone says, well, you take the best player available on the board. Okay. Like if you're the Texans in, like, let's say even 2019, are you really doing that? You know what you needed. It was usually corner or offensive line. Like that's what you needed. But in this situation, you really probably take the best player on your board, and it's probably going to be something you need. The only thing that I can cross off the list, like as far as the top 10, like if we're talking about the top 10, you could cross off cornerback. And I'm not going to get into, like, you know, obviously you're not taking a tight end in the top 10, but I think you can probably cross off cornerback because you feel pretty good about Derek Stingley, and you can find someone like, you know, Steven Nelson's playing pretty good. You can put him opposite. I wouldn't be shocked if they took a tackle, if they took a long-term tackle. I wouldn't be shocked if they took a wide receiver. There's some damn good, especially with that Browns number. Like if you can get the best receiver in this draft, you got to sign up for that because there's some damn good receivers in this draft. But they truly, like, when it comes to needs, it's gonna be a mofo to argue. There ain't no 3 needs. Like they need everything.
Yeah, I think the obvious answer on what you're looking for, and this to me is also why, like, the tie-in Davis Mills, this is why his development and the evaluation of him is so important, because you're trying to figure out if that's something that you're trying to address in the top few picks. Now, I've been on the record of saying that if you can get Bryce Young, you go get him. I'm not necessarily a fan of any of the other guys. Like, you gotta go get them. If they like him, fine. If they like him, fine. Like I can be sold on the other guys, but I am sold on Bryce Young. Like
I'm down with that. But then after that, that's where it gets fun.
Yeah, that's where it gets fun. And then so back to the point, like, to me, if Davis Mills is worth a damn, which is what we're still trying to figure out. And I think the most recent game against the Raiders is the best game that he's played, certainly of the season, maybe of his career. I think that evaluation ends up factoring into what you do with those top 2 picks, because to me, it's no question on where you start. And you asked that a minute ago, like, where do you start? If you can do it, like you started edge rusher and wide receiver, some combination of that need and best player available. So you.
But
need
how much
both,
do you like Bryce Young? Like, do you like him more than Will Anderson? Like,
yes.
if you have the beast like Will Anderson or Jalen Carter or something, do you like Bryce Young more than them?
No, it's about quarterback and the fact that I believe Bryce Young is going to be a star, or can be a star. I can't say for sure, obviously, he's going to be a star, but I think Bryce Young can be a star at quarterback. The only questions about his game, like, there are no questions for me about his game. The only questions I have about Bryce Young is the fact that and he's my size. Like I don't love that. And to me, it's not a matter of how that affects his game as much as how it might affect his durability. And I think it's valid questions about how that body will hold up in the NFL. It's one thing to do it in the SEC, which is probably as close as you'll get to the NFL without being in the NFL. But to me, like it's only a matter of size. That's the only question about him. If you can get Bryce Young, to me, it's a no-brainer. Go get the dude. Go get Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Like it's just,
I wouldn't be opposed. But I will say, and I look,
it's
the thing for me though is that the front seven is much worse at what they do than Davis Mills is what he does. And that says more about them than Mills. Yeah. Like Davis Mills is closer to the caliber of the worst example of a quarterback competing than this front seven is to any front seven that competed. I don't think you can even this is one of the worst front seven. This is the worst front seven in Houston Texans history.
Yeah, it very well may be, and I don't think it's a question even of like how bad is the front seven or how desperately. Like I think it's an obvious and clear need. The more kind of pertinent issue that you're gonna run into, I think, when it comes to the draft, is supply and demand. And going back to sort of your point about best player available and position of need, like you know what the needs are. They're everywhere, but the most pronounced ones I think are the front seven, specifically, an edge rusher, a pass rusher of some sort, or just defensive line overall. And then beyond that, obviously, there's going to be a lot of wide receivers in this class, and you need that, obviously. So it's going to be more of a matter to me of navigating where you are exactly and just kind of where the prospects fall. You know, like if you can get the better wide receiver relative to the edge rusher, then you go that way. You know, like you're kind of doing like a mix and a matching of supply and demand once you get there. But the needs are obvious.
You can revamp like the second round is a money zone for like revamping an offense. Like Indianapolis, they drafted Pittman Jr. and Jonathan Taylor in the second round. So you can get like that. That is if you are able, Brandin Cooks ain't going for no second, right?
Nah, he went for a second he went for a second 2 years ago.
Yeah. That,
you know what I mean? Like I don't see a scenario where he could go for a second.
Yeah, I think it's a fourth. It might be a fourth that can turn into a third. Maybe they take on more of the money and try to increase the.
But the point, Landry, is at this point cleaning the slate, right? Like to me, it's just like try to get him to take the money, get as much money off the books as you possibly can, and just kind of move on. Like you got Brandon. Think about it. They traded for Brandin Cooks at a time when they still thought they were going to be competitive. You know, they had sold themselves on the DeAndre Hopkins trade. They brought in Brandin Cooks, overpaid for Randall Cobb, still had Deshaun Watson. They still thought they were going to be competitive. Like none of the premise on which Brandin Cooks was traded for still applies now. So like the whole idea is to just clean the slate and to start over and to reshuffle the deck at wide receiver.
Boy, this receiving core without Nico and without Cooks, if they don't have it, I mean,
well, that's what's interesting to me too about this game though coming up, Landry, going up against Tennessee. Like you got to think about it, man. Best thing that the Texans do is run the ball. As good of a game as Davis Mills had on Sunday, best thing they do is get a ball to Dameon Pierce. Best feature of their offense. But Tennessee's pretty damn good against the run. You know, Tennessee's pretty damn good against the run, and I think that you're going to have to rely on Davis Mills at times to make some plays in this game. And I think maybe he can. Like, the issue is, what does he got to throw the ball to? Like, what does Pep Hamilton scheme up with no Nico Collins, with Brandin Cooks not looking the same as he did last year? It can still be effective, but, like, what do you scheme up? Do we see more of Jordan Akins and O.J. Howard? Like, we were led to believe this is going to be a tight end centric offense.
Now you're killing my buzz, bro. Now you're going too much into the now. You're getting too much in the sticks. Do we see more OJ Howard or Brent? I don't know.
Well, but you, I mean, you
Jordan
just
Akins,
mentioned.
I don't know.
You just mentioned the fact about the receiving core not having no receivers with Nico Collins out. Like that's going to be a main storyline once we get to the game on Sunday. Like what do they do with no Nico Collins? And maybe going back to the long term, maybe that's speaking to the overall outlook of this team that, going back to the draft, like, okay, your offense is so bad that absent Nico Collins, you and I are sitting up here asking, what are you going to do? Like, what's your offense going to do? Because Nico Collins might not be available. Like, to hell with the idea of, OJ Howard and Jordan Akins. Like, what are you going to do with no Nico Collins? Like, that's the problem that we're speaking to and what they got to address in the draft.
Yeah, and I mean, last year you lost Tunsil for all those games. You really didn't. It's not like they got a lot worse. It's not like they fell off. So I am intrigued to see what this team looks like without Brandin Cooks. Although you can make a case they really haven't had him this year. He's been pretty bad. And who knows what happens. You're not buying that he needed to lift today, right?
No, that's absurd. That's absurd. And I think, honestly, Landry, I want to kind of get your thoughts on this. I think it's going to look even worse. Like, that's going to look even sillier if we get past the trade deadline and Brandin Cooks is still here. Because, like, how do you explain that? Like, how do you justify that? Like, hiding Brandin Cooks from the media so he doesn't have to answer any questions about the trade.
This made me feel like he's gone no matter what.
Yeah.
Like this is like his last week.
The only way that that's not weird after the fact, if he's not gone, is if we have like a clear understanding of why he wasn't traded. Like there wasn't a market for him, or you know what I mean? Like there's like a clear reporting and understanding of why he didn't get dealt. But if he just doesn't get dealt and we're all just kind of looking around with our hands in the air, like, what's Brandin Cooks still doing here? Today is going to look even sillier. Like what was that about? Like why tuck your tail between your legs like that?
Yeah, I think he's gone.
For a dude that's been a spokesman for the team. Like Brandin Cooks has been a spokesman for the team for the last, going on 3 seasons now.
Yeah, I think he's gone. I mean, it would be really, really surprising if he wasn't. Like really surprising.
What do you think his market is? Like you asked me.
Fourth?
I don't think he's going for it. Like I'm thinking fourth. I'm thinking it's about a fourth.
I would think probably a fourth, depending on what the money is. I don't think the contract's as bad as a lot of people do, especially if you're, a contender. The cap's going to jump up if he's producing the way that he can produce. Now, is he washed? I don't think he's washed. Like I don't think he was as dominant in training camp as we've seen him before. So I still think he has some pretty good ball. I think he definitely needs to not be your number one option. But
yeah, well, I think there's something to be said for that too. Like in terms of what his contribution to be wherever he goes. Like if he goes to a contender where he's not the number one option or even the number 2 option, and he's just another dude out there, then I think he can be real effective. So yeah, it just depends on what team is that thinks he can be that guy. That's why Green Bay is kind of odd to me because he's like the number 2 receiver in Green Bay immediately.
He might be the one.
It might be the one. So,
might be better than Lazard, I would say. I mean,
yeah,
he might be the one.
I'm a little higher on Lazard than most, but yeah, he might be. That is not to say much. So.
Just a wild time around here, man. And it's even wilder because it seems like Las Vegas thinks the Texans are going to win. They're begging you to bet Tennessee right now. Tennessee's a 2-point favorite. I feel like a lot of people are going to jump on that. They're begging you. I would just have to charge it to the game there. I would have to take Tennessee -2 and say, all right, we'll see what happens here. I just find it hard to believe that this team's going to lose to Tennessee. I don't think you're going to catch them slipping like you did last year. Last year, they were in like very firm control of the division. Texans were coming off the bye. I know Tennessee is banged up, but I just find it hard to believe that the Texans win this game, especially with Tennessee being able to run the rock.
Yeah, I don't find it nearly as hard to believe. Like, I'm not picking them, don't get me wrong. And I certainly wouldn't bet on them. But I wouldn't find it hard to believe it all. Like one of the storylines going into the game is the status of Ryan Tannehill, and one of the cool things that we might see is Malik Willis's first career start, and what that looks like. It could be awesome, it could be a disaster, it could be somewhere in between. Like I'm at the very least intrigued and curious about it. But the idea going against a rookie quarterback making his first career start, and the only redeeming quality that you really got about the offense is Derrick Henry. Like with respect to Derrick Henry, which he's obviously Derrick Henry, this is not a good offense. Like it is a bad offense. Both of these are bottom tier offenses for all of Tennessee being the number one team in the AFC South. They are a terrible offense. Like they both rank, 25th. The Texans are 25th in passing. The Titans are 29th in passing. 29th. Like that's it. Like this is gonna be hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, hand the ball off to Dameon Pierce, and try to make some plays off of play action and that kind of thing. Like I could see it, considering how bad the offense is. I read something, Landry, that the Titans have scored one touchdown in the fourth quarter all year. Like
they overachieve consistently with Mike Vrabel. Like that's really the theme. They just overachieve. Like they can play any way, they can lose anybody, and they just overachieve with Mike Vrabel. I don't know how, they just do it. It doesn't matter if Derrick Henry gets hurt last year, they're the number one seed. It doesn't matter if they have to play the number one seed, they get to the AFC Championship game. And a lot of times they've been kind of victims of their own overachievement, where people kind of, put them in on this pedestal, and then when they lose, it's like, well, how do you choke as the one seed? Nobody thought they were a contender last year. Like they were a fool's gold one seed, and they just consistently overachieved. And that's the thing that I'm looking most forward to as the Texans process begins. Like what does the coach look like? Who is the coach whenever they start to get competitive? Because that's the other thing. Like we're talking about the draft. I don't think Lovie Smith's going to be here 5 years from now or whatever. If Nick Caserio establishes him as a GM, like, is it going to be like a team that consistently overachieves? Because that to me is ideal. And that's what Tennessee is. And I also found myself thinking about this, and we'll get into this at noon on the show tomorrow. The biggest choke job in the history that I've ever seen, and it was pitiful. Like it was actually pathetic. We talk about the old Oilers, the Titans, the Texans, all that history. Like the fact Bill O'Brien got a 21-0 lead and pissed his pants and had to breathe basically out of an oxygen thing and didn't know what was going on, to the point where he just lost his mind, is one of the most pitiful chokes in the history of this city. He had the city by the balls. They were going to host the Tennessee Titans in an AFC Championship game. He goes for it on that 4th and 1, maybe sends some sort of message, decides not to fake punt, doesn't just completely start sweating and losing his mind on the sidelines. I mean, there's a chance that Bill O'Brien and Jack Easterby, they could have never done wrong with Cal McNair. You give him an AFC Championship game against the old Oilers, and they probably would have had a chance to get to the Super Bowl with that. It's amazing, like, how historic of a moment that would have been for this rivalry. And I've never seen a choke like that. We're going to get into that at noon tomorrow. But I'm just, like, when you think about this rivalry and just what could have happened, I've never seen someone fold that much, especially someone who prides himself on being Mr. Hardo, Mr. Football Guy, as Bill O'Brien. Never seen anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, on the point of the rivalry, like, these two teams have never met in the postseason, and it's for that exact reason. Like, they were that close the way you laid it out. Without that choke job, they are that close to, the rivalry kind of culminating into that postseason matchup. And instead, that did not happen. And the Texans have not been the same since then. Like they've never recovered. Now, obviously a lot happened between then and now, but they have not recovered since then. They have not been the same since that moment. It's funny, man. Like with Bill O'Brien, whenever these coaches get fired, the NFL coaches get fired, like Matt Rule is the example I'm going to use. I saw, Andrew Filipponi out in our sister station out in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he said Kenny Pickett was basically a rich man's Ben Roethlisberger.
Man, okay.
I mean, he was
Wow.
saying he was a future Hall of Famer.
Wow. Well, the ridiculous take that he had that I was going to pick apart was that the Carolina Panthers should hire Bill O'Brien because as long as they keep GM duties out of his hands, he's a good head coach. He's a good coach.
He's not. I'm so sick of people
that,
saying that. He's not.
Dude, he said this, and I'm like, okay.
God.
Tell me you did not watch that Chiefs game. Tell me you did not watch that division.
Dude, he had the most talented team in the division. Like, I keep hearing about it. He had the most talented team in the division. Like, oh, he won with Brian Hoyer and he won with Brock Osweiler. Yeah, Zach Mettenberger was the quarterback. It was Marcus Mariota. It was Blake Bortles. It was
worse than it was
a
now.
disaster. It was Andrew Luck having to eat lunch out of a straw. And there was Matt, like it was not like he had the most talent in this division. I hate that.
And they had a damn good defense too. Like they had a damn good defense.
An elite defense, best in the league.
They had a damn good defense against division foes, division teams, primarily who did not have good quarterbacks.
Look at the coaches that he beat. Gus Bradley, Mike Mularkey, Chuck Pagano, like we got to cut that out.
Yeah. And then on top of that, like if you just want to isolate it even, like the biggest stage, going back to the choke job in Kansas City, on the biggest damn stage, this dude doesn't have a play for 4th and short, but thinks he's so clever and cute enough
to fake a punt
with an injured safety. Like I know the injury was either the shoulder or it was an upper body injury for Justin Reed, but like a safety that's not even 100%.
Look at this. I have the stats here.
And it's not even that fast. Like no disrespect to Justin, like I like him as a player, but he's not even like super fast. So Justin
you'd already settled for 3 on 4th and 1.
That's what I'm saying. Like, so there's no logic. There's no logic even followed there. No ethic there. No philosophy. You're just flying by the seam of your pants.
Here's Bill O'Brien's record against AFC South coaches. Like, I keep hearing this, like, oh, he's a good coach. Okay. He was 6-0 against Gus Bradley. He was 3-0 against Ken Wisenhunt. He was 4-2 against Doug Marrone. He was 3-2 against Mike Mularkey. He was 2-2 against Mike Vrabel. And he was 2-3 against Frank Reich and 3-5 against Chuck Pagano. So the only coaches that are worth the damn on this list, Vrabel, Reich, Pagano, those are the coaches that he has a 500 or losing record against. Look at that list. Look at that list, and then look at the rosters. It's unbelievable that people shape their lips to say this, and I don't expect them to understand, but he was not a very good coach. Like he had the most talent. Like Rick Smith provided him with the most talent in the division, and he was able to take advantage of it. And I always hear, well, he won with Brock Osweiler. He won with, he won with Brian Hoyer. Okay.
Yeah. No, I think he was just average at best. And then there were moments that you could point to where he is an example of the fact that I think coaches in general are underrated because even the good ones have game management issues and make odd decisions. Like Andy Reid is an offensive genius, perhaps maybe the best that we've ever seen. But even he has been a bad game manager over the course of his career. So it's like I think he was just emblematic of that like he wasn't special. And then in the key moment, in the biggest moment of his career, he pissed down his pants.
And that's the whole reason someone, a Facebook user, asks the smart ass question, why are we talking about Bill O'Brien? We're talking about him because the Texans are facing the Titans, and not too long ago, the Texans were this close to facing the Titans in the AFC Championship game. So that's why we're talking about Bill O'Brien. Move on, guy. That's why.
Bro,
I'm fired up about it. Here's the other thing, though, B. Scott.
Yeah.
We talk about quarterbacks. He won with Brock Osweiler. He won with Brian Hoyer. Look at these stats. These are his wins and losses against quarterbacks. He won 4 times. 4 of his 23 wins were against Zach Mettenberger. 8 of his 23 wins in the division were against Blake Bortles. 3 were against Andrew Luck as he was getting the shit beat out of him to where he retired in his 20s. 3 times against Marcus Mariota, twice against Gardner Minshew, once against the ghost of Matt Hasselbeck, once against Jacoby Brissett, and once against Ryan Tannehill. Right there, 12 of his 23 wins, 8 against Bortles, 4 against Mettenberger. And then he lost to Luck 4 times, lost to Bortles a couple times, Brissett 3 times, etc. He wasn't facing good quarterbacks. It's not like he was going against Patrick Mahomes and stuff.
Doesn't matter. AFC champs.
Get the hell out of here. What are you even doing with that shirt?
Doesn't matter.
What the hell is wrong with you?
No. Check the year.
Okay.
Check the year.
Okay.
This is an
old it does matter. That's a
shirt.
Kubiak throwback. That's not a BOB throwback.
Exactly. I've had this shirt for over a decade, and I'm that guy who wears shirts for 10 years.
Okay, I can get down with that.
Yes, sir.
Goodness gracious. All right.
D.
Scott, appreciate you for stopping by, man. Good
shirt, man. I enjoyed it, man. Keep killing it.
All right, man. I'll holler at you later. That's Brandon Scott, Sports Radio 610. Get fired up about Bill O'Brien. I've just never seen anything like Bill O'Brien wetting his pants. And as we're talking about the old Oilers, we're talking about the Titans. Just who knows what would have been? Who knows what would have been? Like if the Texans had faced the Titans in the AFC Championship game. Things might have been different. There might be a butterfly effect. King Bill would probably still be king. Who knows? Jack Easterby might be your GM. Deshaun Watson might be your quarterback. Just absolute craziness. Who knows? Get a little bit triggered when we start talking about BOB. But the Titans are coming to town first place, which is where they've been most of the time since Vrabel left in 2017. Probably some more news coming down on the Brandin Cooks front. So we'll keep you posted on that. Tune into the show tomorrow from 10 to 2. We'll get to that. Let go of these nuts. How about that? Let go. Come on, let it go. Let it go. The hell out of here. It's relevant right now. Go let go of yourself. Love you anyways. But yeah, tomorrow, 10 to 2, Sports Radio 610. Subscribe to the channel, spread the word. We'll see what happens. Team Tank right there in the comments. I'm down with that too. Pretty exciting. Stuff's going pretty well. Teams that you don't think are going to lose are losing. Process is playing out, getting rid of Easterby guys, and fun times are ahead. No, by the way, the Astros Friday. We'll have post-game shows for that. Follow on Twitter at Landry Locker, on Instagram at Landry Locker. It's going to be a fun week. It's going to be fun times, and I appreciate all of you. Remember, we're all in this together. Have a good one. I'll talk to you tomorrow, 10 a.m. and right here on the Locker Room on YouTube.